Expectations are really a powerful driver in how we act. They're much more significant than we ordinarily give it credit for. Now, what is an expectation? In essence, it's an anticipation of something that's going to happen in the future. And so the expectation is wrapped up in anticipation because we don't actually have it in our hand at the moment, but we anticipate, expect that we will. And it's also tied up in the choices and the consequences for the things that we'd like to happen. So, what's your expectation for this morning, for today? What's your expectation for being here? Hear from God. Not bad. Well, I'm here because I'm always here. I'm just doing my routine. I'm here because I want to praise God. I'm here because, I want to give Him thanks. I'm here because I'm lonely. And there are some people who might even be generous and kind to me. I'm here because I don't have any place else better to be. Whole giant range of possibilities with our expectations. Let me tell you what I would like your expectation to be. Jesus said, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst." I didn't say that. Jesus said it. Do we come to this moment with the expectation of meeting Jesus? Part of it is I want to know what He has to say. But part of it is, I want to be open and honest with Him. I want to share myself just as He shares Himself with me. But see, if I don't have that expectation, then I'm not going to I'm not going to organize the rest of my life in accordance with it. It's going to be accidental. Now, Jesus does meet people accidentally, at least from their point of view, not from His. And there are significant benefits to that. But for God's people, for us who claim to be disciples, I want to go and be with Jesus. I want to go and sit at His feet. I want to go and share my joys and trials. I want to go and hear what He has to say to me. I want to be present with Him and allow His love to overwhelm me, to heal me, to comfort me, to challenge me. Great expectation is, I want to meet with Jesus. Now you go, wait a minute, 4,000 Normandy is not a major place. No, we don't have a 100-piece orchestra and a 200-voice choir, and we're not broadcasting on 12 different networks. Doesn't matter. Jesus didn't say any of that. What He said was, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. And so if you take Jesus at His word, the consequence is what? He's here, right now, in this place. And he is incredibly desirous of communicating, of touching you. He's incredibly hopeful that you will listen, that you will share, that you will allow him to be your teacher, your comforter, your healer, your hope. The problem is not Jesus. The problem is me. Because I don't have an expectation. I'm just doing what I always do. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. Somebody told me to do. And I missed that moment. I know that I'm getting hard of hearing. I recognize that. But beloved, many of us are hard of hearing. May not be physically, but spiritually. We're not attuned to the moment. Why is this important? Well, as you can see, we're in our survey of the New Testament with the casket empty, and we move to the, expectation is the first one. And so this is the beginning of the New Testament. Why? Because if you remember, we left the Old Testament in Babylon basically 500 years before Christ, and then Messiah will come. What happens in the 500 years? What happens between 500 BC and 6 BC? And the answer is the time of expectation, okay? And that's what we're going to look at. How did God's people manage to get from Babylon to Bethlehem? And what was the driving force? And so in the Old Testament, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel are all the prophets of the exile period while they're in Babylon. And so much of what happens in that time period from 640 to 6 is explained and is laid out in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And then in the Apocrypha, in Maccabees, there's also a good deal of extra biblical history that's there. Now, just to put you into context, all right? So the big picture backing up, I'm a fan always of context to understand. God's people were conquered and taken to Babylon for the third time in 597 BC. Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed Jerusalem and he'd already taken Daniel and the others, but this is the culmination. 597 is the end of Jerusalem as an independent nation, okay? And so we're in Babylon, and that's where the prophets are speaking in that moment. In 539, Cyrus of Persia comes and conquers Babylon. And so the Babylonian Empire is absorbed, if you will, into the Persian Empire. And you remember that Daniel goes into great depth about Cyrus and the things that the Persians did. In 330, Alexander the Great comes and he wipes out the Persian Empire, and he absorbs all of that into the Greek Empire. And then in 63 BC, Pompey comes and overthrows the Greek Empire, and you have the development of that. Okay. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar is the big honcho in the Babylonian Empire. And Nebuchadnezzar has this dream And he goes and he says to all of his wise men, to the Magi, to all of his advisors, I had this dream, and you're going to tell me what the dream was and its interpretation. Or I'm going to wipe you all out. Now, just think about it for a moment. He says to you, tell me the dream and tell me what it means. Now, and they actually say to him, no, you tell us the dream and we'll tell you what it means. And he goes, that's not how it works. I want you to tell me the dream and then the interpretation. And they're all of the Magi in Babylon at the time are trying to figure out how we're going to die, because this isn't good. No one can do this. Except there is a young Jewish boy, and he comes and he says to the Arioch, the chief assistant, I can do this. And all the Magi go, thank you. And Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar right off the bat, look it, dude, nobody can do this. This is not possible. This is not human. There is a God in heaven who can interpret this dream. And by his grace, I am going to tell you not only the dream, but its interpretation. And so he goes and he unfolds the image. And the image, at least in my interpretation, is a giant statue. It's a giant human representation. And then he goes on to explain the purpose and the understanding of it. And so, the first piece is that the dream's interpretation is rooted in an explanation of kingdoms. And kingdoms are simply who rules, who makes the rules, how is it enforced. And so, Daniel says in verse 36, this was the dream, now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the King of kings, to whom God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power and the might and the glory, and into whose hand he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over all of them, you're the head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar, you've got basically a free hand to do whatever you want. And you are the head of gold. You're the big deal in this. And the interpretation is that Babylon is the beginning, that Nebuchadnezzar is the leader, the center of it. And then he says in verse 39, another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the second kingdom is Cyrus, the Persian, and then the third kingdom is Alexander the Great. Now, what's happening here, just in a broader sense, is there is a physical shift of the center of power and influence from east to west. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but if you look, let me see, I got to get this right. If you look on the far right, over here in the end, let's see. No, don't do that, dear. Sorry. I thought I had, and apparently I don't. No. All right. On the far right over here, On the far right, way over here in the end, is Susa, which is the Persian capital, and then just to the left of it is Babylon. But where's Greece? Where's Greece? Basically in the middle of the map. And so you're moving from east to Greece, and where's Rome? Further west. And so the center of power and influence is moving radically westward from Susa actually to Rome. And again, it has significant impact for us because we are part of the Western civilization. And so as God moves the kingdom from east to west, moves it into our purview and our way of living. So, the interpretation. There shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these things. And as you saw the feet and the toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the firmness of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. And you saw the iron mixed with the soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, and they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. What's the fourth kingdom? Rome. Rome was incredibly strong in its beginning and in its structure. But as it continues to expand, what happens? It loses its ability to control absolutely. And so all of the fringes begin to fail, and Rome no longer has the power or the ability to exercise its rule in the same way. And because it is the dominant, because it is the largest and most important kingdom in the Western world, it begins the process of assimilation. And all of the places around the fringes, all of the places begin to integrate into Rome and Rome's leadership. And hence, the intermarriage brings instability. Syncretism never brings strength. And so you have this, and so ultimately Rome will not be conquered by an external force. Rome will collapse internally. Why? Because the iron and the clay will not ultimately be strong enough to withstand. The kingdoms become progressively weaker, and the fourth weakness is its division because of its size and its breadth. It's partly iron, partly clay, and it is an incompatible joining of, dare I say, babes. Dare I say, the way in which they do things. And the Roman way fails because it is overwhelmed by the magnitude of its kingdom. But this is a story about kingdoms, and there's a fifth kingdom. And Daniel says to Nebuchadnezzar, "And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all of these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. The God of heaven is going to intervene in human affairs and is going to create his own kingdom. It will never be destroyed. It is everlasting. It is not going to collapse from internal corruption. It is not going to be overcome by external power. It is going to be eternal. And the kingdom will not be to another people. It will be rooted in God's people. In Jerusalem, it will be rooted in those who live under the great covenant of Yahweh's love. And it's going to emanate from that forever. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms. And a great God has made known to Nebuchadnezzar what shall be after this. And then the promise. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. Put it in context now. God says to Nebuchadnezzar, but also to all of the Jews in Babylon, God is going to create an everlasting kingdom out of you. And they go, wait a minute, we're slaves. Wait a minute, our homeland is destroyed. Wait a minute, we have no self-determination. How is God going to do this? What is God going to do to make this happen? This is not real. Daniel says the dream is certain and its interpretation sure. And for the next 500 years, God's people, ready, live with the intentional expectation that God's promise is going to be accomplished. Listen to Isaiah. Listen to Isaiah's explanation. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse. Okay? Stump means what? Trees cut down, right? You don't have a stump if there's a tree on top of it. You have a tree. And so from the stump of Jesse, from what was the root, there's going to come forth a shoot, a new thing, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. What appears to be dead, what appears to be of no value, what appears to be outside the scope of anything of value, a branch shall come forth and shall bear fruit, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord, and his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, nor decide disputes by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And it shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fattened calf together. And a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like an ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra, and a weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. They shall not hurt or destroy in any of my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Now, how do you want to summarize that? One word: Messiah. Messiah. The stump of Jesse. Who was Jesse? David's father. David's father. Out of David's lineage and line, God is going to raise up his kingdom. And that kingdom is described as wisdom and understanding, counsel and might, knowledge and the fear the right relationship of the Lord. And righteousness, doing the right thing. Judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And with power, strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Here's God's kingdom. Here is what it means that Messiah has come and that we have embraced that righteousness and faithfulness. Bring together antagonists. Righteousness and faithfulness bring together the wolf and the lamb. Why are they antagonists? What does the wolf do with the lamb? Eat it. The leopard and the young goat. What does the leopard do? Eats it. The calf and the lion, the fattened calf together. And then turning the whole thing upside down. A young child will lead them. And the cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. A radical and pervasive turning around of everything that we know, of everything that we're so caught up with. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child over the adder's den. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. God's promise. Expectation. Not only from 640 BC to 6 BC, but for us as well. Because we live in an unfinished eschatology. The kingdom, the everlasting kingdom that Isaiah and Daniel have promised has begun, but it is not yet complete. But this is where the kingdom of God is headed. This is our future. This is our expectation. And beloved, we live in a current world which so desperately needs to hear God's plan and God's future. We live in a world that so desperately is longing for peace. Now, lest you think that Isaiah is the only one, Jeremiah says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David," root of Jesse, David, "a righteous branch. And he shall reign as king and deal wisely and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell securely. And this is the name by which he will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. I will raise up for David a righteous branch." Isaiah prophesies it. Jeremiah prophesies it. Daniel and Ezekiel both prophesy the same thing. That God is going to act in a powerful way, and out of the root of Jesse, out of David, he will raise up a righteous branch. He shall reign as king and deal wisely, execute justice and righteousness in the land. And in his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell securely. The promise of God's people. And this is the name by which he'll be called. The Lord is our righteousness. Righteousness simply means complete agreement with God. Righteousness means living in agreement, living in intimate connection, doing the right thing. And the right thing is what God has decreed and called his people to. And it's all given, it's all rooted in Messiah. It's all rooted in God's anointed one. You remember the Magi? They come to Bethlehem. What are they looking for? King of the Jews. They come to Bethlehem. We saw his star as it rose, and we've come to see him. And the thing or the outcome, the consequence of Messiah, how's your Hebrew? Shalom. Peace. And peace is not simply an end to hostility, but peace is, at least shalom in the Hebrew, is completeness, soundness, welfare, peace, righteousness, faithfulness, equity. It is the best possible outcome. It's completeness. There's nothing lacking. There's nothing that's missing. It's soundness. It works. It's effective. It's the way in which it is supposed to be accomplished. And welfare, all taken care of. Every piece. And there is peace. There's harmony. There's not division. There's not antagonism. There's peace and righteousness and faithfulness and equity. Why? Because Messiah has come. And for basically 500 years, from 640 until 6, the Jews were looking for Jesse and David's root and the Spirit of Yahweh to produce Jesus, the Anointed One, the Messiah, the Prince of Peace. That's the expectation that the Jews were looking for from 640. I come back to my question to you, what are we looking for? What are you expecting? John 4, the woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming. Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus said, if you knew who was giving you this water, you'd ask. And she says, I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. The culmination of expectation between Jesus coming to earth in his first appearance and the misery of Babylon. God's people lived with the promise of the expectation of Messiah, of Jesus, the one who would be the Prince of Peace. What's your expectation? Because, not to get ahead of myself, but I can't help it, when Jesus left, one of the last things he said to his disciples was, as you see me go, so shall you see me come. And the people of God have lived for 2,000 years with the expectation that Jesus is coming again. Jesus will return to earth physically, bodily, absolutely manifest, not as a babe in Bethlehem, where he doesn't even have a room for his mother to give birth, not in as humble and as meek as a child in that instance, but when he comes the second time, he's coming in the fullness of the magnificence of his inherent glory from before the creation of the world. And every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess, and every eye will see Jesus in the fullness. I said earlier, Isaiah saw the throne of God, and he falls on his face, and he says, woe is me. That day will come again when we, those who are left, will see Jesus in the fullness and the magnificence of his divinity, Messiah, and he'll bring the eternal, the everlasting kingdom to complete fruition, and a new heaven and a new earth. When's the last time you thought that Jesus is coming again? When's the last time it was on your mind and heart? Even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. See, our expectations are so minimal. And God invites us to embrace the sure promise of his everlasting kingdom. It's all founded not on, I was reading an article about expectations in a psychology pamphlet, and it talked about magic thinking, and it talks about prayer as magic thinking. And I'd like to say to the author of it, you could not be more wrong. You could not be more ignorant. Prayer is not magic thinking. Prayer is embracing the promise of the divine. Prayer is living in the power of what God has promised to his people and owning it as your own. Why? Because God has given it to us. God has given it to us. And so our expectation needs to be built on understanding Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, understanding the promise of Messiah, understanding what Jesus did in the Gospels, what Jesus did in explaining all of it through Paul in the letters and through John and Revelation. And so our grasp and our expectation is not built on magic thinking, but is built on the promise of the Almighty. And the consequence, the end result, is shalom. The consequence, the end result, the way in which it all ends is real peace, wholeness, completeness, nothing lacking. And that's what God has set forth for his people. Our great tragedy is that we're not looking forward to it. We are not anticipating and expecting it to happen. Because when it does, it changes our whole perspective of existence. We begin the New Testament from Babylon to Bethlehem, recognizing the great privilege of the expectation of the everlasting kingdom, of which Jesus of Nazareth is the ultimate ruler. Amen.